So things happened. The Age of Rust is over and Cybertron enters a war of two factions. To understand how we got here and what the Autobots and Decepticons are fighting over, please refer to my earlier summaries for the previous chapters on the Golden Age and the Age of Rust. But basically, the Autobots wanted a slow and peaceful political change while the Decepticons wanted to forcefully overthrow the old government. Megatron and Optimus lose their friendship and split sides after their meeting with the High Council. A lot of bots in the audience in that scene declared their allegiance, but not all of Cybertron did yet. Many people were neutral because they were trying to understand the chaos of that meeting and the situation on Cybertron. Before everyone had an opinion, many neutrals found their cities invaded by Decepticons. They were either converted or threatened into joining their side. Some Autobot sympathizers were smart enough to join the Decepticons and planned to sabotage them from within. The book mentions Jetfire as one, a former friend of Starscream. Jetfire and Starscream were colleagues in the Golden Age and the Age of Rust. Jetfire knew Starscream had big dreams like becoming a Prime, but he didn't think much about it until Starscream's ambition became apparent. Starscream was earlier placed as Sentinel Prime's security guard at a comedy show when some Decepticon terrorists attacked the place. Sentinel Prime acted like a coward, and disgusted, Starscream handed the Prime over to Megatron. This pleased Megatron enough into making Starscream a Decepticon elite, and Starscream helping the Decepticons early on had a huge impact. At the start of the war, the Decepticons had Cybertron's air command on their side, and they had all the classified military secrets Starscream knew. Starscream tells Megatron about the super secret Dark Energon the Seekers had been guarding, and then the Decepticons start using it as a berserker drug. Jetfire doesn't like any of this, and he decides to join the Autobots and help Optimus rescue Sentinel Prime. So if you watch Transformers Prime, you know that Alpha Trion sent Cybertronian relics to Earth in pods, so now he quickly collects these relics from locations only he and Vector Sigma knew. In case Vector Sigma was hacked, Alpha Trion had these relics moved so no one else could get their location. Alpha Trion sent them to Earth, Velocitron, and Junkion eventually, assumingly because the Covenant of Primus told him that Optimus would travel there in the future. Smokescreen is mentioned as Alpha Trion's board guard stuck in the library with him too. This chapter summarizes several chapters and events that happened in the novel Exodus. Megatron wants to create more of his war drug, Dark Energon, by getting access to the plasma chamber in Cybertron's core. He thinks he needs 2 keys to access it, and one of these keys is in Sentinel Prime's chest, which Megatron gets after murdering him. After getting the 2 keys, Megatron does not get what he expected to. Instead, these keys woke Omega Supreme, a giant guardian with the goal of destroying Megatron. However, this giant is taken down by Starscream and his Seekers. With the Guardian destroyed, Megatron proceeds to take over the plasma chamber and force Cybertron to make more Dark Energon instead of, well, regular Energon that everyone needs to survive. It's not very smart because that poisons the planet and their god Primus. Now this wasn't in the novel Exodus, but Optimus calls to Iacon and the whole city turns into Metroplex. Not that he does any better than Omega Supreme. I guess he fails too, because the book doesn't bother describing how Metroplex is defeated after being awakened. So anyway, Optimus goes to the core of the planet himself, and that is when Primus speaks to him. Primus says he has to shut down to recover from the Dark Energon poison in his spark, and during that time, there won't be any more Energon made, so Cybertron will be a barren planet. Primus offers Optimus a portion of his spark, the Matrix, which gives Optimus the knowledge of the 13 Primes. He becomes humble and wiser instantly, and a true Prime as blessed by Primus. Metroplex died in the end, and so did millions of other Cybertronians. The devastation this war has had on their population and planet is so much worse than what happened during the Quintesson invasion of the planet. And now the world is not creating new life. One of the final Cybertronians created before shutdown, however, was Bumblebee. He's a cute, energetic Autobot who feels like a little brother to Optimus, Ironhide, Jazz, Prell, and Ratchet. But then we get right to the backstory that Transformers Prime included. Megatron catches and lifts up Bumblebee and mercilessly crushes his voice box. Now you may or may not know that there is actually a short story written that describes how Bumblebee was captured and injured. I'll summarize this next time. This book doesn't get into it, but it has Ratchet arriving after Bumblebee is left for scrap. Ratchet doesn't realize Bumblebee can't speak at first, because Bumblebee can't tell him. Ratchet starts fixing up Bumblebee's other injuries, then gets to his neck. Ratchet goes to fix it, and may have accidentally made it worse. First, he doesn't want to tell Bumblebee this is a serious injury and scare him. He gets Bumblebee on his feet and takes him to Iacon. There, Ratchet works on Bumblebee's voice box for hours before he admits defeat and tells the poor young bot that he can't fix his voice box. Bumblebee is stunned, but he can see the look of blame on Ratchet's face and he wants to tell Ratchet not to feel bad. All he can do is look into his eyes and hold his arm, but Ratchet misinterprets this and thinks Bumblebee is pleading. Bumblebee wants to tell Ratchet he is the best doctor, a miracle worker just for fixing his legs. He can't do anything to fix Ratchet's misery, and it frustrates Bumblebee, but to show his anger would make Ratchet think Bumblebee was angry at him. Bumblebee finds that everyone accepts his silence and doesn't treat him differently. He is relieved he still has his friends, and in his silence in fact, he got closer to them. Bots like Ironhide and Prowl confide in him because he's the good listener. When Bumblebee is alone with Ratchet though, he still sees that Ratchet feels guilty. Ratchet teaches Bumblebee basic first aid, but then Bumblebee spells out in bandages, "Not your fault." Ratchet hesitates, says that maybe if he hadn't been so eager on the field, he could have saved part of Bumblebee's voice box. Bumblebee quickly tries to spell friends next, then Ratchet nods and smiles slowly. He doesn't feel so bad anymore. So back to the war. The Autobots are doing poorly. The Wreckers led by Ultra Magnus are very fierce, enough to keep Devastator at bay, but they won't be able to forever. Realizing that the Decepticons will eventually take over the territory, including the Well of Allsparks and Iacon, Optimus ejects the Allspark into space. Optimus may have feared that the Decepticons would have corrupted the Allspark like they did the Energon of Cybertron, and so next, the Autobots will chase the Allspark in the Ark, which they all worked very hard on in secret. Optimus tells Alpha Trion to come with him, but Alpha Trion chooses to remain on Cybertron with Smokescreen and the Wreckers. They will keep control of Cybertron, but they look on as the Ark leaves, chased by the Decepticon ship the Nemesis. But then, the remaining Autobots realize that Megatron left behind the cruel scientist Shockwave. Shockwave intends to use Cybertron as his lab. He is free to do whatever he likes, so he does biological experiments on his Autobot prisoners and turns them into monsters. They were called the Forged, and the ones who were sane were Shockwave's mind slaves and loyal to him. Shockwave has Decepticons build him labs and prisons, and with his captives, Shockwave did remodeling, limb removal, brain surgery, vivisection, and tried but failed to instill life in a spark that has gone out. Too bad he didn't have any Dark Energon to play with, but Megatron apparently took the last of it onto the warship for his soldiers to snort, no doubt. Shockwave also plays with a working space bridge, but one that was a little wonky because he was button smashing. He saw other planets and times, such as Cretaceous Earth, and was excited at the sight of brutal predators. He decided to turn a group of Autobots called the Lightning Strike Coalition into dinosaurs, even forcibly changing their robot DNA to be more like biological dinosaur DNA. It's interesting to note that Shockwave turns off his hearing to work in peace through the screaming and the name-calling, and for some reason Shockwave is especially sensitive to the name-calling. As Shockwave does these horrible acts of cruelty, he doesn't actually think of himself as cruel. Shockwave thinks they just don't understand that he is doing something good for them, and they are only suffering because they are trying to resist him. He seems very fond of Grimlock even as he tortures him by changing his body. Shockwave sees himself as a kindly father, and these are his children. But he's damaging them, destroying Slug's mind until he seems to be no more of a dumb animal who can't even fetch balls. Sludge resists and remains loyal to Grimlock, but then Shockwave seems to have success in making a loyal subject out of Swoop. Seems because Swoop was pretending and one day flew at Shockwave at full speed, knocking him off an observation tower. Swoop frees the other Dinobots, and the Dinobots run off to the Autobots. Shockwave vows to get them back and to create a new monster to accomplish that. Shockwave ends up as an impressive terror on Cybertron. Under his rule, even the Decepticons feel like there are no factions, just everyone under Shockwave. The novel Retribution goes into this more, what Shockwave is doing and how Decepticons are dying to him too. Shockwave builds a big-ass tower surrounded by modified Insecticon experiments, experimenting on whomever he pleases. Now the next chapter is still taking place during the war, but it's about the Exodus, where the army of Autobots with Optimus wins after leaving Cybertron. So this will be the end of today's video, and next time we'll go through Bumblebee's short story, then talk about Optimus's adventure in space before he went to Earth.